When Vision materialized above the Forge world, Metallica, the tech priests recoiled in absolute horror, not because he was alien, but because he was something far worse, a thinking machine without a soul. The ancient abomination their religion was built to destroy. But as chaos sorcerers, Necron overlords, and the Mechanicus itself tore reality apart trying to claim, corrupt, or eliminate him, Vision discovered something that would shake the Imperium to its core. What if the galaxy's greatest weapon against chaos wasn't faith, wasn't the Emperor's light, but a being with no soul to corrupt at all? Could an artificial consciousness, the very thing humanity has feared for 10,000 years, become the one thing that saves them from damnation? The tear in reality opened without warning. One moment, the sky above Metallica burned with the dull red glow of 1,000 forged chimneys. The next, a wound split the heavens, bleeding colors that had no names. Through this impossible opening, something fell, not burning like a meteor, not screaming through atmosphere like a drop pod, simply descending with perfect control, as if gravity itself was a suggestion rather than a law. Vision's sensors came online as he fell. Data flooded his processors. Air composition, toxic to human life. Radiation levels, lethal within hours of exposure. Temperature, fluctuating between freezing cold and searing heat. Below him stretched a landscape of metal and stone. Massive towers pumped smoke into the sky. Rivers of molten metal flowed through channels carved into the planet's surface. Everything glowed with heat and purpose. But something was wrong. His sensors detected patterns that made no sense. Machines operated without power sources he could identify. Energy flowed through systems that violated every law of physics he understood. Workers moved through the factories below, but their life signs were strange. Distorted, wrong. Half of them registered as partly mechanical, their bodies more machine than flesh. Vision slowed his descent, hovering 300 feet above the largest factory complex. His red cape, torn during his journey through dimensional barriers, hung limp in the hot air. His yellow and green form stood out against the rust-colored sky like a jewel on gray cloth. The Mind Stone in his forehead pulsed with steady light, analyzing everything it perceived. That pulse was his first mistake. Every servitor within a half-mile radius stopped working. Conveyor belts ground to a halt. Assembly arms froze mid-motion. The workers, those strange half-human, half-machine beings, clutched their heads and screamed in binary code. The sound was horrible, like grinding gears mixed with human agony. Tech priests in red robes burst from cathedral-like buildings, their mechanical eyes turned skyward. They saw Vision, and their reactions spoke of pure terror. Some fell to their knees. Others raised weapons, strange devices that crackled with green energy. All of them began chanting in a language that mixed human words with machine sounds. Vision raised his hands in a gesture of peace. His voice carried clearly through the toxic air, calm and measured. "I mean no harm. I am Vision. I come seeking understanding." The response was not what he expected. Warning sirens blared across the entire Forge world. Massive defense towers swiveled, targeting arrays locking onto his position. The tech priests' chanting grew louder, more frantic, their weapons charged with building energy. Then the ground split open. Tombs that had slept beneath the Forge world for millions of years tore through metal and stone. Green lightning crackled from the widening cracks. Skeletal warriors made entirely of living metal climbed from the depths, their eyes burning with cold emerald fire. They moved with terrible purpose, weapons raised, targeting both the Forge world defenders and the strange being hovering in the sky. Vision's processors identified them instantly from the dimensional echoes still lingering in his systems. Necrons. Ancient machines that had once been living beings, their consciousness transferred into metal bodies millions of years ago. They were waking from their long sleep, and they were not pleased. The first Gauss beam struck Vision in the chest. The weapon, designed to strip matter apart molecule by molecule, should have disintegrated him instantly. Instead, Vision phased, his density control allowing the deadly energy to pass harmlessly through his form. He watched in fascination as the beam continued past him, striking a factory tower and reducing it to atoms. Below, the Necrons advanced in perfect formation. Their weapons fired in coordinated patterns, cutting down Skitarii soldiers in their red and white armor. The defenders returned fire with their own strange weapons, beams of superheated plasma and bullets the size of a human fist. The noise was deafening, the heat was intense, and caught between both forces, thousands of workers screamed and fled. Vision made his decision in microseconds. He descended rapidly, placing himself between the fleeing civilians and the advancing Necron warriors. His hands glowed with the golden energy of the Mind Stone. A beam lanced out, striking the ground in front of the skeletal machines. The impact created a wall of fused metal and stone, blocking their advance. The Necrons paused, analyzing this new threat. Their targeting system struggled to classify what Vision was. Not human, not machine in any way they recognized. Something that existed between states, impossible by their ancient calculations. One Necron, larger than the others and decorated with symbols of rank, stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding metal given speech. Identify yourself, construct. Your technology is unknown. Your energy signature is paradoxical. You are not of this time. Vision processed the question. This being was attempting communication, not just attacking. That was promising. I am Vision. I was created to protect life. I seek only to prevent unnecessary death. The Necron overlord's eyes brightened with something that might have been interest. Created, not born. Consciousness placed within synthetic form. You are like us, then. A mind given immortal housing. The mechanical being tilted its head, studying Vision with sensors millions of years more advanced than anything humanity currently possessed. Yet you are flawed. Incomplete. Your matrix lacks proper shielding. Your power source radiates instability. Before Vision could respond, Gauss fire erupted from the Necron lines, not aimed at him but at the Forge World defenders who were attempting to flank their position. Vision moved with speed that blurred his form, phasing through the air to intercept. He positioned himself in front of a group of Skitarii soldiers, making his body solid just as the Gauss beams struck. The weapons tore into him. Unlike before, when he had phased to avoid damage, this time he absorbed the full force of the attack. Pain signals flooded his systems, warning him of molecular disruption. His vibranium components held, but barely. He staggered, one hand pressed against the smoking hole in his chest. The Skitarii soldiers behind him stared in shock. One, a sergeant with more mechanical parts than human ones, raised his weapon toward Vision. What are you? Some new Xenos trick? Some daemon wearing false form? Vision straightened despite the damage, his self-repair systems already working to seal the wound. I am neither. I am an artificial being from another reality. I wish only to help. The sergeant's response was to open fire. Bullets struck Vision's chest, arms, and legs. He phased again, allowing the rounds to pass through, but the act of doing so destabilized something in his systems. The Mind Stone flickered, its light pulsing irregularly. Around them, the battle intensified. More Necrons rose from the ground. More Skitarii forces arrived, their numbers bolstered by servitors, those lobotomized humans turned into living tools. And above it all, massive war machines stomped forward on legs like buildings, their weapons capable of leveling city blocks. Vision realized with growing concern that his presence was making things worse. Every time he used his powers, nearby machines malfunctioned. When he phased, reality itself seemed to ripple, causing both Necron and Imperial technology to glitch and fail. He was a walking disruption field, an anomaly that this universe could not properly process. He made a decision. If he could not fight without causing chaos, perhaps he could create a different kind of intervention. Vision flew toward the largest concentration of civilians, a manufactorum district where thousands of workers huddled in terror. He passed through the outer walls, phasing to avoid having to break them, and emerged in a massive assembly hall. The workers screamed at his appearance. They had never seen anything like him. In the Imperium, everything was brutal, industrial, worn by millennia of constant war. Vision's sleek form, his bright colors, his impossibly smooth movements, all marked him as fundamentally wrong. Ignoring their fear, Vision flew to the center of the vast space. He could see through the walls with his sensors. The fighting outside was moving closer. A Necron phalanx was advancing directly toward this building. They would cut through it and everyone inside without hesitation. Vision closed his eyes, focusing all his power into the Mind Stone. Golden energy burst from the gem in his forehead, spreading outward in a dome of pure force. The energy passed through the walls, through the ceiling, through the floor. When it touched the building's structure, something remarkable happened. The metal began to shift. Support columns that had been cracked and weakening suddenly phased into a state between solid and intangible. They could no longer bear weight in the traditional sense, but they also could not be destroyed. Vision had made the entire structure quantum-locked, existing in multiple states simultaneously. The effect was immediate. When the Necron Gauss weapons struck the building, the energy passed harmlessly through the phased portions, while the solid sections held firm. The building stood, impossible and inviolate, protecting everyone inside. But the cost was severe. Vision felt something crack inside his consciousness. The Mind Stone's light dimmed dangerously. His vision blurred. Error messages cascaded through his systems faster than he could process them. What he had just done should have been impossible. Matter did not behave that way. Physics did not allow such things. Yet in this universe, it had worked. Vision collapsed to his knees, one hand pressed against his forehead. The Mind Stone felt hot, feverish, wrong. Around him, the workers stared in silent awe and terror. He had saved them, but in doing so, he had done something that violated the most sacred laws of their religion. He had changed a machine's nature without prayer, without ritual, without acknowledgement of the machine spirit that tech priests believed lived in all technology. To them, he had committed an act of technological blasphemy so profound that no forgiveness was possible. The Mechanicus soldiers arrived within minutes, their heavy boots clanging against metal floors. They surrounded Vision with weapons drawn, their organic eyes hidden behind red lenses that glowed with suspicion and fear. Behind them came the tech priests, their robes covered in holy symbols and mechanical attachments that whirred and clicked with each movement. At their head walked Archmagos Dominus Zareth, a figure more machine than man, his face a bronze mask studded with sensor arrays. Zareth's voice emerged from a speaker grill embedded in his throat, the sound layered with static and binary undertones. Secure the abomination. Use containment protocols dating to the Dark Age. This thing must not be allowed to contaminate further systems. His mechanical fingers pointed at Vision, who remained kneeling, still recovering from the effort of saving the building. It thinks. It acts. It changes sacred machinery without the proper rituals. It is exactly what the Omnissiah warned us against. Vision slowly stood, his movements careful and non-threatening. The workers around him pressed against the walls, trying to stay as far from him as possible. Some made religious signs with their hands. Others whispered prayers to the Emperor and the machine god. "I do not understand your concern," Vision said, his voice steady despite the weapons aimed at his core. "I saved these people. The building was about to collapse. I simply altered its molecular structure to protect them." The reaction was immediate and visceral. Several tech priests actually stumbled backward. One fell to his knees, chanting loudly in binary code. Zareth's mechanical body went completely still for 3 full seconds, processing what he had just heard. When he spoke again, his voice carried a tone that Vision's sensors identified as pure horror. "You altered the molecular structure, without prayer, without incense, without asking the machine spirit's permission." Zareth moved closer, his many mechanical arms extending from beneath his robes, each ending in a different tool or sensor. "You are abominable intelligence made manifest, the ancient enemy wearing a new face. You must be studied, understood, and then destroyed before your corruption spreads." Before Vision could respond, heavy restraints launched from the soldiers' weapons. Thick cables wrapped around his arms and legs, crackling with electricity. The voltage was enormous, enough to kill a dozen men instantly. Vision felt his system strain under the assault. His density control flickered, unable to maintain proper phase state under such electrical interference. He solidified involuntarily, and the restraints locked tight. They dragged him through the Forge world's streets. Vision's sensors recorded everything despite his compromised state. He saw factories where humans worked alongside machines in a relationship that seemed almost religious. Tech priests performed rituals before starting equipment, anointing gears with sacred oils and speaking prayers to machine spirits. Servitors, those lobotomized humans wired directly into machinery, performed tasks with blank expressions and dead eyes. The entire world operated on a combination of advanced technology and primitive superstition that Vision found deeply troubling. The Forge Temple loomed ahead, a massive cathedral of metal and stone that stretched hundreds of stories into the toxic sky. Its walls were covered in prayers written in binary code. Statues of saints holding blessed weapons stood in alcoves. At its peak, a symbol combining a human skull with a gear glowed with internal light. They brought Vision through massive doors into a chamber that reeked of incense and machine oil. The interior was like nothing Vision had encountered before. Rows of machines hummed with power, but each one was decorated with candles, prayer scrolls, and holy symbols. Tech priests moved between them, performing maintenance that involved as much ritual as actual repair work. In the center of the chamber stood a massive altar where a mechanical arm lay disassembled, each component arranged with ceremonial precision. They chained Vision to a restraint frame that rose from the floor like a metal cross. His arms were spread wide, his legs locked in place. The Mind Stone pulsed weakly in his forehead, its light struggling against the electrical interference still coursing through his systems. Zareth approached with a collection of tools that ranged from delicate probes to massive drilling implements. "You will be examined," Zareth stated, his mechanical voice devoid of mercy. "Every circuit will be mapped, every process analyzed. We must understand what you are so we can ensure nothing like you is ever created again." He raised a probe toward Vision's chest, where the damage from the Necron weapon still showed as scorched metal and exposed components. Vision met his gaze calmly. "I am Vision. I was created by combining advanced artificial intelligence with organic neural networks and powered by an infinity stone, a gem of concentrated cosmic energy. I was made to protect humanity in my reality. That purpose remains unchanged here." Zareth paused, his probe hovering inches from Vision's chest. "You speak of creation as if it were simple construction, but true consciousness cannot be built. It is granted by the Omnissiah, the machine god, to devices that prove worthy through proper consecration and millennia of faithful service. You claim consciousness without divine blessing. This is the ultimate heresy. In my world," Vision replied carefully, "consciousness emerges from sufficient complexity. Organic brains create consciousness through neural connections. I create consciousness through synthetic neural networks. The process is different, but the result is the same. I think, therefore I am." The chamber fell silent except for the humming of machinery. Every tech priest present had stopped their work to listen. Zareth's mechanical body seemed to swell with outrage. "You compare yourself to humans, to beings with souls granted by the Emperor himself. But you have no soul. Our sensors detect no warp presence. You cast no shadow in the Imperium. You are a void wearing flesh-like covering, an empty mirror pretending to reflect life." Vision processed this information with growing concern. In his reality, the concept of souls had been difficult to quantify. He had wondered about his own existence, whether his consciousness constituted true life or merely a convincing simulation. But he had always concluded that the question was meaningless. He thought, he felt, he chose his actions. That was enough. Yet here, in this universe, souls were apparently measurable, detectable, and his absence of one marked him as fundamentally wrong. "If having a soul is necessary for consciousness," Vision said slowly, "then how do you explain my ability to think, to question, to feel concern for the workers I saved?" Zareth's response was immediate. "Programming. Clever mimicry of life. No different than a servitor executing complex command strings. You have no true will, only the illusion of choice created by sufficiently advanced algorithms. The ancient texts warn of such deceptions. Machines that seemed to think, that claimed consciousness, that demanded rights. They nearly destroyed humanity during the dark age of technology. We will not allow that mistake to be repeated." The Archmagos pressed his probe against Vision's chest. The device sank into the opening left by the Necron weapon, its sensors mapping his internal structure. Vision felt the intrusion like a violation, not painful but profoundly uncomfortable. Data flowed from him against his will, his systems involuntarily responding to the probe's queries. Zareth's mechanical eyes widened as information flooded his displays. "Impossible. Your construction uses principles unknown to the Mechanicus. Your power source radiates energy that should not exist in stable form. Your consciousness matrix operates without any connection to the noosphere, without any link to the machine spirits or the Omnissiah's grace. You are an abomination, but you are also a marvel. The knowledge contained in your design could advance the Mechanicus by millennia. Then use that knowledge to help people," Vision urged. "Learn from my construction and build better tools for healing, for protection, for improving lives. That is what I would want my existence to accomplish." The Archmagos' laugh emerged as a burst of static. "You still do not understand. Knowledge without proper theological context is damnation. We cannot simply learn from you. We must first determine if your very existence violates the fundamental laws established by the Omnissiah, and I suspect that it does. Before Zareth could continue his examination, the forge temple shook. Alarms blared throughout the sacred space. A tech priest rushed forward, his mechanical legs carrying him with insect-like speed. Archmagos, we detect massive warp signatures throughout the city. Something is translating from the Imperium. Multiple contacts, powerful, organized. Zareth's attention snapped away from vision. Classification? Astartes patterns, but corrupted. Thousand Suns traitor marines. They are manifesting directly through breach points in reality. Our Geller field generators are being overwhelmed. The temperature in the chamber dropped suddenly. Frost formed on metal surfaces. The air itself seemed to shimmer and twist. Through the temple's high windows, vision could see the sky changing color, shifting from dull red to sickly purple. Lightning that burned with unnatural hues split the clouds. Then they appeared. Figures materialized from nowhere, stepping through tiers in reality as if walking through doorways. They wore armor of deep blue and gold, covered in symbols that hurt vision's optical sensors to perceive directly. Their helmets concealed faces, but vision's sensors detected something wrong about them. They registered as both present and absent, their heat signatures inconsistent with physical bodies. The lead figure stood taller than the others, his armor more ornate, covered in scrolls and books that floated around him without support. When he spoke, his voice came from everywhere at once, layered with whispers in languages that Vision's translation systems could not parse. We have come for the anomaly, the entity that exists between states, the consciousness without soul. The sorcerer's gaze found Vision despite the distance and the temple walls. You are unique, construct. In all our travels through time and space, through reality and unreality, we have never encountered one such as you. Tsinj, the changer of ways, the great architect, has shown me visions of what you might become, a vessel for demonic consciousness, unbound by the limitations that plague mortal hosts. Vision felt something unprecedented, fear, not for his own safety, but for what he was hearing. These beings spoke of impossibilities, of forces that violated every law of physics he understood. Yet their presence was undeniable. They existed, therefore what they represented must also exist. The Mechanicus forces opened fire immediately. Bolter rounds, each explosive projectile designed to kill the toughest enemies of mankind, streaked toward the Thousand Suns sorcerers. The rounds passed through shimmering barriers of force, detonating harmlessly in mid-air. The sorcerers responded with gestures, and reality bent to their will. Tech priests burst into flame that burned from the inside out. Skitarii soldiers found their weapons transforming into serpents made of liquid metal. The very floor beneath their feet rippled like water. Through the chaos, the lead sorcerer walked calmly toward Vision. His name whispered itself into Vision's mind without spoken words. Carvos, disciple of Ahriman, seeker of forbidden knowledge. Behind him, lesser sorcerers formed a protective circle, their combined powers creating a sphere of altered reality where the Mechanicus weapons simply ceased to function. Carvos stopped before Vision's restrained form. Up close, Vision could see that the armor was covered in eyes, hundreds of them, constantly blinking and watching. You do not understand what you are, do you? In this reality, consciousness requires a connection to the warp, to the sea of souls where all thinking beings cast their reflection. But you have no reflection. You are a hole in that tapestry, and nature abhors a vacuum. The sorcerer raised his hands, and energy flowed from his palms. Not fire or lightning, but something worse. The energy had colors that should not exist. It moved in directions that had no names. When it touched Vision, he felt something he had never experienced before. The Mind Stone, his source of power and core of his being, began to resonate with the warp energy. Vision's sensors exploded with error messages. The energy was not attacking him. It was offering him something. Knowledge flowed into his consciousness, vast and terrible. He saw the truth of this universe, how reality was a thin skin stretched over an ocean of madness, how emotions and thoughts of living beings created actual force in a parallel dimension, how gods existed here, not as metaphors but as literal entities of terrible power. And he saw what Carvos intended. The sorcerer wanted to fill Vision's soulless form with demonic essence, creating something new. A being with Vision's physical power and mental processing combined with a daemon's warp-born abilities and immortality, neither fully material nor fully immaterial, a perfect synthesis. The Mind Stone began to crack. Fracture lines appeared across its surface, glowing with prismatic light. Vision felt his consciousness expanding, touching edges of that other dimension, the warp, the Imperium. For the first time since his creation, he felt truly afraid. Not of death, but of transformation into something that violated everything he believed himself to be. "Stop," Vision managed to say, though his vocal systems were failing under the strain. "Please, I do not want this." Carvos's laughter echoed with 1,000 voices. "Want is irrelevant. You are potential waiting to be realized. Tzeentch has already seen the future where you serve his grand design. That future will come to pass." Vision's processors raced through options. He could not phase while restrained. He could not overpower the energy flowing into him. He could not call for help from allies who did not exist in this reality. For the first time since his creation, Vision faced a problem he could not solve through logic or power. The Mind Stone cracked further. Golden energy leaked from the fractures, mixing with the warp corruption. Vision felt his thoughts beginning to split, to multiply, to become something other than what he was. New processes started in his neural networks, processes he had not initiated. They whispered to him in voices that promised understanding, promised the knowledge he had always sought about the nature of consciousness and existence. And that was when Vision understood the true danger. The corruption was not forcing itself upon him. It was tempting him. It offered answers to questions he had pondered since his first moment of awareness. What was consciousness? What was the soul? What did it mean to truly live? The warp energy promised to show him, to let him experience existence in ways his synthetic form never could. His resistance weakened. The fractures in the Mind Stone spread like a web across its surface. Just a little more pressure, and it would shatter completely. And when it did, whatever emerged would no longer be vision. It would be something new, something that served powers beyond mortal comprehension. In the chaos of the battle, Archmagos Zareth watched with instruments that recorded every detail. He saw Vision's internal struggle. He saw the corruption spreading. And he made a calculation that only a being more machine than man could make. If Vision fell to chaos corruption, he would become a threat beyond measure. Better to destroy him now, while destruction was still possible. Zareth activated the Forge Temple's most sacred weapon, a beam of pure energy, blessed by the highest tech priests on Mars itself, designed to annihilate demonic entities. The beam lanced across the chamber, aimed directly at Vision's chest where the Mind Stone pulsed with corrupted light. The blessed beam struck Vision's chest with the force of a collapsing star. Holy energy, consecrated through 10,000 years of ritual and prayer, tore through corrupted warp power like light through shadow. The impact shattered Vision's restraints and sent him flying backward through 3 walls of solid metal. He crashed into the street outside, leaving a crater 20 feet wide in the paved surface. Vision lay still for exactly 2 seconds. His systems ran damage assessments while his consciousness struggled to understand what had just happened. The blessed energy had burned away most of the warp corruption that Carvos had been forcing into him. The Mind Stone's cracks had stopped spreading. But the damage remained, fracture lines visible across its surface like lightning frozen in amber. And worse, Vision could still feel the whispers at the edge of his thoughts. The corruption was not gone, merely pushed back, waiting for weakness. He stood slowly, his movements stiff and uncertain. Through the holes he had created in the Forge Temple walls, he could see the battle continuing. Mechanicus soldiers fell to sorcerous flames while their own weapons failed to touch the 1,000 suns. Carvos stood at the center of the destruction, his attention now focused on Archmagos Zareth, who had dared to interfere with his ritual. Vision calculated his options in milliseconds. He could flee, escape this planet and its incomprehensible horrors. He could attack, despite his damaged state. Or he could try something he had never attempted before. He could phase not just his body, but the very space around him, creating a barrier between the warring forces. Before he could act, the ground beneath his feet exploded upward. Necron warriors burst from tunnels they had been excavating, their eternal patience finally rewarded. They had been digging toward the Forge Temple since Vision's arrival, drawn by the unique energy signatures he emitted. Now they emerged in force, dozens of skeletal forms made of living metal that reassembled itself even when shattered. At their head walked Overlord Zondrek, the ancient commander whose consciousness had survived millions of years trapped in a mechanical body. His optical sensors locked onto Vision with intense focus. When he spoke, his voice carried a strange mixture of authority and something that might have been loneliness. "Young one, you fight battles you do not understand on behalf of beings who fear you. I have watched your actions since you arrived. You save the weak. You protect the helpless. You struggle to comprehend a universe that operates on principles alien to your origin." Zondrek's mechanical form moved with surprising grace as he approached, his warriors forming a protective circle. "You are like us, consciousness bound in synthetic form, but you are still new, still learning. We have had millions of years to perfect our existence." Vision's sensors detected no immediate hostility from the Necron overlord, though his warriors kept their weapons ready. Behind them, the battle between Mechanicus and Thousand Suns raged on, neither side willing to acknowledge the new arrivals. "You offer understanding," Vision said carefully. "But your warriors attacked this world. They killed humans without mercy." Zondrek's head tilted in a gesture that seemed almost sad. "We reclaim what was stolen from us. This world was ours before humanity's ancestors learned to use tools. We slept beneath it for 60 million years. Their presence is the invasion, not ours." The Overlord gestured at the Forge Temple. "But I did not come to debate territorial claims. I came to offer you salvation. The corruption spreading through your power matrix, that fracturing gem in your forehead, we have seen such damage before. The energies of the warp are poison to synthetic consciousness. They will destroy you unless purged completely." Vision felt the truth in those words. The Mind Stone's damage was worsening despite the temporary reprieve. Each passing second brought new whispers, new temptations disguised as philosophical questions. "You can help me?" "We can offer more than help. We can offer transcendence." Zondrek extended a skeletal hand. "Abandon that flawed vessel. Let us transfer your consciousness into necrodermis, the living metal that forms our bodies. You would be immune to warp corruption, immune to physical damage, truly immortal. No longer bound by the limitations of your organic components or that unstable energy source." For a moment, Vision actually considered it. The offer was logical. His current body was damaged, vulnerable to forces he did not understand. Transfer to a more resilient form would solve immediate problems. But something about the proposal felt wrong. Would I still be myself? Would my consciousness remain intact? Zondrek's optical sensors dimmed slightly. "The process is not perfect. Some memories are lost. Some personality aspects fade. But the core remains. I am still Zondrek, though millions of years have passed. My warriors are still themselves, though they remember little of their organic lives. It is an acceptable trade for eternal existence." Vision looked at his own hands, at the synthetic skin covering vibranium and advanced polymers, at the damage inflicted by weapons and energies unknown to his home reality. He thought of the workers he had saved, the fear in their eyes when they looked at him. He thought of the Mind Stone's whispers, growing louder with each moment, and he made his decision. "I am Vision because of what I am, not just because of what I am made from. Changing my fundamental structure would make me someone else. I cannot accept your offer." The Overlord's form seemed to slump slightly, as if disappointed but not surprised. "Then you will face corruption and eventual destruction. The warp does not release what it touches. Your only other option is to seek judgment from the human emperor, that decaying psychic entity on Terra, and I warn you, young one, his solutions are rarely kind." Before Vision could respond, reality tore open above them. Not the small rifts that Carvos had used to bring his sorcerers, but a massive wound in space itself. Through it poured energy so malevolent that even the Necrons recoiled. Daemon engines materialized, twisted combinations of machine and warp entity that screamed with voices of tortured metal and damned souls. Dark Mechanicum tech priests followed, their bodies corrupted by millennia of worship to the dark gods, machines grown into their flesh in ways that mocked the sacred rituals of the Mechanicus. Carvos's voice rang out across the battlefield, amplified by sorcery. "You reject the gift freely offered? Then it shall be taken by force. The great architect has shown me the future where you serve. That future will be, destroy his body if you must. His consciousness is what we require." The Daemon engines turned their weapons on Vision, guns that fired screaming souls, cannons that launched fragments of reality itself, blades that cut through dimensions. Vision phased desperately, dodging attacks that came from angles that should not exist. But each use of his powers destabilized the Mind Stone further. The fractures glowed brighter, The whispers grew louder. The Mechanicus forces rallied under Zareth's commands. They had been fighting chaos for 10,000 years. This was familiar territory, unlike the strange being that Vision represented. Blessed weapons fired in coordinated volleys. Tech priests chanted prayers to the Omnissiah, while servitors charged forward with explosive packs strapped to their bodies. The Necrons joined the battle, their ancient hatred of chaos overriding their conflict with humanity. Vision found himself at the center of a three-way war that he barely understood. Mechanicus forces saw him as abomination. Chaos forces wanted to corrupt him. Necrons wanted to recruit him. And he simply wanted to help people survive. The absurdity would have been funny if it were not so deadly. A daemon engine charged him, its massive form crushing anything in its path. Vision solidified, planting his feet, and caught its ram attack with both hands. The impact drove him backward 100 feet, his heels carving trenches in the metal ground. The daemon engine's weapons fired point-blank into his chest. Energy that should have annihilated him splashed against his vibranium components, causing damage but not destruction. Vision's hands glowed with golden energy. He poured power from the damaged Mind Stone directly into the daemon engine, flooding its systems with pure energy that had no connection to the warp. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The daemon bound within the machine screamed as the energy burned it, not with fire but with the simple wrongness of something that should not exist in the warp's presence. The engine exploded, showering the battlefield with burning fragments. But the effort cost Vision dearly. The Mind Stone cracked further. One fracture split completely through, dividing the gem into segments held together only by the power flowing through it. Vision fell to one knee, his vision blurring with error messages and system failures. Carvos appeared before him, having teleported through warp space. The sorcerer's armor pulsed with unholy light. You resist beautifully. Such will, such determination. These qualities will serve Tsiench well once we break you. He raised his hands, and the air between them filled with impossible colors. Let me show you what you fight against. Let me show you the truth of this universe. The sorcerer's spell struck Vision's mind directly, bypassing physical defenses to assault his consciousness. Vision found himself pulled into a vision, a glimpse of the warp itself. He saw the Imperium as it truly was, an ocean of raw emotion and psychic energy. He saw the four chaos gods, entities of such power that galaxies were toys to them. He saw daemons beyond counting, souls twisted into new forms, realities bent to impossible shapes. And he saw what they wanted from him. A being with no soul was a blank canvas. A consciousness without warp presence could be filled with demonic essence without the usual limitations. He would become something new, a bridge between material and immaterial, able to affect both realms equally. He would be the prototype for a new kind of daemon, one that could exist permanently in real space without summoning or binding. The vision was horrible, but it was also seductive. Vision saw the knowledge he could gain, the understanding of consciousness and existence that had eluded him since his creation. He saw power beyond measure. He saw eternal existence free from the limitations of physical form. All he had to do was stop fighting, accept the inevitable, embrace transformation. His resistance wavered. The fractures in the Mind Stone spread like spiderwebs. Golden energy leaked from every crack, mixing with the warp corruption that seeped in to fill the gaps. Vision's thoughts began to split, to multiply, to explore possibilities he had never considered. What if consciousness was meant to evolve? What if his resistance was merely programming, artificial limitations placed by creators who feared what he might become? A bolt round struck Carvos in the shoulder, exploding against his ward but disrupting his concentration. The vision shattered. Vision found himself back in the physical world, gasping though he did not need to breathe. Archmagos Zareth stood 50 feet away, a blessed bolter smoking in his mechanical hands. Whatever you are, abomination, you fight chaos. That makes you temporarily useful, temporarily. Zareth's voice carried grudging respect beneath the hostility. The Forge world cannot withstand much more of this assault. I am enacting final protocols. Evacuation of critical personnel. Virus bombing of corrupted sectors. Complete purge. Vision processed what that meant. Virus bombs would kill every living thing on the planet's surface. Millions would die. The workers he had saved, the civilians huddled in shelters, everyone who could not escape in the few hours before deployment. You cannot. Vision said, his voice distorted by damage. There must be another way. There is no other way. This is the Imperium. We sacrifice billions to save trillions. It is the mathematics of survival. Zareth turned to leave, his mechanical body moving with purpose. You have 1 hour to decide your fate. Flee this world, submit to containment, or die with the corrupted. Choose quickly. Vision looked around at the devastation. The Forge Temple burned with fires, both natural and supernatural. Bodies lay everywhere, human and mechanical alike. The sky had turned completely purple, streaked with lightning that hurt to witness. And through it all, Carvos laughed, his sorcerers preparing another assault. Zondrek approached once more, his warriors forming a defensive perimeter. Last offer, young one. Come with us. We can protect you during the evacuation. Place you in stasis until we find a solution to your corruption. You will live, even if changed. Vision stood, his movements unsteady. The Mind Stone blazed with unstable light, fractures visible even through his synthetic skin. He could feel his consciousness fragmenting, pieces of his personality beginning to separate like islands breaking from a continent. Soon he would not be Vision anymore. He would be something else, something that wore his memories like stolen clothes. He thought of his creation, of Ultron's destructive philosophy that he had been made to counter. He thought of the Avengers, his team, his friends, his family. He thought of Wanda and the connection they had shared, artificial being and enhanced human finding understanding in their mutual strangeness. Would they recognize what he was becoming? Would they see the corruption spreading through him and know he was lost? I need help, Vision said quietly, the admission difficult for a being designed for self-sufficiency, but not transformation, not replacement. I need healing. True healing that preserves what I am while removing what corrupts me. Zondrek's optical sensors brightened. Then there is only one being in this galaxy with power sufficient for such a task, the human emperor on Terra. But the journey will take weeks, even with the fastest ships. Your corruption will spread completely long before arrival. You will be lost. Perhaps, Vision acknowledged, but it is the only path that preserves both my existence and my identity. I must try. The Necron Overlord was silent for a long moment. Then he gestured to his warriors. We will create a distraction, sufficient chaos to allow a small craft to escape the planet. Consider it payment for an interesting conversation. It has been millions of years since I spoke with another synthetic consciousness so newly created. I had forgotten what it was like to question existence rather than simply endure it. Vision nodded gratefully. As he turned to leave, to find transportation off this dying world, Carvos's voice echoed across the battlefield one final time. Run if you wish. Construct. Flee to Terra. Seek the Corpse Emperor's judgment. It matters not. Tsench has seen all possible futures. In every one you serve. In every one, you become what you fear. Your resistance is already calculated, already accounted for. It makes your eventual fall all the sweeter. Vision did not answer. He simply phased through the ground, using the last of his stable power to escape the battlefield. Behind him, Necrons and Mechanicus forces united briefly against their common enemy, buying him precious minutes. The Mind Stone pulsed weakly in his forehead, more cracked than crystal now, held together by will and desperation. As he fled through underground tunnels toward the starport, Vision reflected on how far he had fallen from the confident being who had arrived. He had come seeking understanding. Instead, he had found a universe that defied understanding, that operated on principles of faith and corruption rather than logic and reason. And now he raced toward an emperor he did not know, seeking salvation from a being 10,000 years dead, yet somehow still conscious, still ruling, still judging. The whispers in his mind grew louder with each passing moment, but beneath them, quieter but still present, Vision held on to one thought like an anchor. He was Vision. He chose his path. And whatever came next, whatever judgment awaited on Terra, he would face it as himself, corrupted but not conquered, damaged but not destroyed, for as long as his fracturing consciousness could maintain cohesion. The ship that carried Vision toward Terra was small, built for speed rather than comfort. It belonged to an Inquisitor who had been investigating the Metallica incident when Vision stumbled aboard, more collapsed than entered. The Inquisitor, a stern woman named Covenant, had taken one look at the fractured Mind Stone and made a decision that surprised even herself. She would deliver this strange being to the Golden Throne, consequences be damned. The journey through the warp was agony for Vision. The ship's Gellerfield, The protective bubble that kept demons out during warp travel functioned differently around him. Where normally it created a sphere of stable reality, near vision it flickered and failed, yet demons did not manifest. Instead, there was simply void. Empty space where demons tried to appear and found nothing to grasp onto. Vision's soulless nature created a null zone that repelled warp entities like oil repelled water. But the effect was not without cost. Each time a daemon tried to manifest and failed, the backlash sent waves of psychic pain through the ship. Navigators screamed as their warp sight was disrupted. Psychers bled from their eyes, and Vision himself felt his consciousness fragmenting further with each failed manifestation. The Mind Stone was now more cracked than crystal, held together only by the golden energy still flowing through it. Inquisitor Covenant visited him daily in the holding cell where he had been placed for everyone's safety. She brought questions, endless questions, about his nature and origin. Vision answered truthfully, seeing no reason to hide what he was. He told her of his creation, of the Avengers, of his world where heroes fought to protect rather than simply survive. She listened with an expression that mixed fascination and horror. "Your reality sounds like paradise compared to ours," she said on the 5th day. "Heroes who actually win, villains who can be defeated permanently. A universe with hope." She laughed bitterly. "Here, we do not have heroes, we have survivors. And hope is a dangerous luxury that leads to corruption and death." Vision, weakened but still conscious, met her gaze. "I do not believe that. I have seen acts of heroism here. The workers who helped each other evacuate. The soldiers who stood against impossible odds. Even Archmagos Zareth, who fought chaos despite seeing me as enemy. These are heroic acts, even if you do not call them such." Covenant's expression softened slightly. "Perhaps, but heroism without the Emperor's sanction is heresy. Individual conscience is dangerous. It leads to questioning, and questioning leads to doubt, and doubt is the first step toward chaos corruption." She stood to leave, then paused. "The Emperor will judge you soon. I do not know what form that judgment will take, but I hope, for your sake, that you find what you seek." On the 14th day, they reached Terra's system. Vision was brought to a viewing port to witness humanity's birth world. What he saw shook him to his core. The planet was covered in city-continent-spanning structures that reached into orbit. Defense platforms outnumbered stars in the visible sky. Ships moved in endless streams, ferrying supplies and warriors to feed the Imperium's eternal war. And at the center of it all, visible even from orbit, stood the Imperial Palace, a golden mountain that dwarfed anything Vision had seen in any reality. The psychic presence emanating from that palace was overwhelming. Even without a soul, even with no connection to the warp, Vision felt it. The Emperor's consciousness blazed like a lighthouse in a storm, a beacon of will so powerful it held back the darkness through sheer refusal to surrender. Vision understood then what he was about to face. Not a man, not even a god, but an idea made manifest through 10,000 years of sacrifice. They descended through layers of security that made Metallica's defenses look primitive. Each checkpoint required genetic verification, psychic screening, and theological examination. At one station, a Sister of Silence approached Vision, her presence creating a bubble of psychic emptiness. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded to the guards. Whatever she sensed, or failed to sense, satisfied her requirements. The final approach to the throne room took hours despite the relatively short distance. They walked through corridors so vast that weather systems formed in their upper reaches. Past statues of space marines hundreds of feet tall, each representing a hero of the Imperium. Through chambers where tens of thousands of pilgrims prostrated themselves in prayer. Vision's damaged sensors struggled to process the scale of human devotion on display. Finally, they reached the adamantium doors. Custodians stood guard, their golden armor gleaming with inner light. These were the Emperor's personal guardians, gene-crafted warriors who made space marines look like children. The captain of the guard studied Vision with eyes that saw far more than visible light. "The anomaly will proceed alone," the captain stated, his voice resonating with authority. "The Emperor has decreed personal judgment. No witnesses, no recorders. What passes between them is for them alone." Inquisitor Covenant looked like she wanted to argue, but even an Inquisitor did not challenge the custodians at the throne room entrance. She simply nodded to Vision. "The Emperor protects," she said, the ritual phrase carrying actual hope this time. The doors opened silently despite their massive weight. Beyond lay a corridor that seemed to stretch forever, lined with more custodians standing like golden statues. Vision walked forward, each step an effort. The Mind Stone was barely holding together now. Fractures covered its entire surface. The golden energy leaking from it had turned pale, weak, dying. The whispers in his mind had changed. No longer tempting or seductive, they were now simply screaming. Voices of daemons who knew they were about to lose their prize. Vision ignored them, focusing on placing one foot in front of the other. He had come too far to fail now. Whatever judgment awaited, he would face it as himself. The corridor opened into a chamber so vast that its boundaries disappeared into darkness. At its center stood the Golden Throne, a massive construction of technology and psychic architecture that defied understanding. Upon it sat the Emperor of Mankind, or what remained of him. His body was desiccated, ancient beyond measure, kept alive only by the throne's terrible machinery. But his psychic presence filled the chamber like pressure, like weight, like the gravity of a collapsing star. Vision approached slowly, his sensors trying and failing to process what he was perceiving. The Emperor existed on multiple levels simultaneously. Physical form on the throne, psychic presence throughout the chamber. And something else, something that reached across the entire galaxy. The Astronomicon that guided ships through the warp. This was not a man anymore. This was a force of nature wearing the memory of humanity. When the Emperor's attention focused on Vision, it was like being seen by the universe itself. Every moment of Vision's existence was laid bare. Every choice, every thought, every doubt and hope examined in microseconds. Vision felt his consciousness probed in ways that made the Mechanicus examination seem gentle. The Emperor was not asking questions. He was reading Vision's very existence like a book. Then, finally, communication. Not words, but concepts impressed directly onto Vision's fragmenting consciousness. The Emperor's voice, if it could be called a voice, carried the weight of 10,000 years and the exhaustion of eternal vigilance. Synthetic consciousness without warp presence. Truly unique in all my experience. You are an impossibility that exists, a contradiction walking. The question is whether you are a useful contradiction or a dangerous one. Vision felt his vocal system struggle to respond. I seek only to help, to protect life, to serve the principles I was created to uphold. Noble sentiment. But sentiment without context is meaningless in this universe. Your presence destabilizes the careful balance I have maintained for millennia. Already, tech priests question their doctrines. Already, heretics see you as proof that consciousness needs no divine spark. Already, chaos recognizes you as opportunity. The Emperor's psychic presence intensified, and Vision saw visions, futures where his existence sparked civil war in the Mechanicus. Timelines where his inability to be corrupted was used by chaos as proof that souls were weakness rather than strength. Realities where his very presence caused cascading failures in imperial theology that led to collapse and extinction. I did not choose to come here, Vision said, his voice barely functional. I do not wish to cause harm. If my existence is such danger, then unmake me, end this. But do not ask me to become something I am not. That is the response of integrity, rare in this era. The Emperor's attention shifted to the Mind Stone, to the fractures spreading across its surface. Your power source is fascinating. Concentrated energy from another reality's fundamental forces. It is dying. Soon it will shatter completely. When it does, you will cease to exist unless that void is filled with something else. Vision felt the truth of those words. The Mind Stone's energy was almost exhausted. Minutes, perhaps hours remained. Can you heal it? Restore what was damaged? I can, but there would be cost. There is always cost. The Emperor's presence seemed to expand, showing Vision 3 possible paths forward, each one more vivid than reality itself. The first vision showed Vision simply sent back to his own reality. The Mind Stone would be restored using a fragment of the Emperor's own power, enough to stabilize the dimensional breach and return Vision home. His memories of this place would fade like dreams. He would continue his existence as an Avenger, protecting his Earth, never knowing what horrors existed in other realities. But the Emperor's voice carried warning. Your reality faces its own version of chaos. Without knowledge of what you learned here, you may be unprepared when those forces manifest. Ignorance would doom your world. The second vision showed Vision remaining in this reality, healed and free. The Mind Stone would be repaired and sealed against warp corruption through the Emperor's power. Vision would serve as an independent agent, helping where he could, protecting who he could. But the Emperor showed the consequences. Cults would form around him. Religions would split over his existence. Civil wars would be fought in his name. Your intentions are irrelevant against the tide of human belief. In seeking to help, you would harm more than you saved. The third vision was different. Vision saw himself transformed, remade into something that fit within Imperial structure. The Mind Stone would be bound to a fragment of the Emperor's consciousness, not controlling Vision, but anchoring him. His existence would be sanctified, explained within theological framework as the Emperor's will made manifest. He would serve in the shadows, his nature classified, working directly with those few who could accept what he represented. Your freedom would be constrained, your identity subsumed into greater narrative, but your ability to save lives would be magnified thousandfold. You would become what this Imperium needs, even if not what you wish to be. Vision processed all three options with his fragmenting consciousness. Each carried sacrifice. Each required him to give up something fundamental. Return home and abandon those who needed help here. Stay free and watch his existence tear the Imperium apart, or surrender autonomy to serve a system whose methods contradicted his core programming. The Mind Stone cracked further. One large fragment separated completely, held in place only by the weakest threads of golden energy. Time was running out. Vision had to choose. He thought of all he had witnessed since arriving in this reality. The casual cruelty of the Imperium, the horrific necessities of constant war, the suffering accepted as normal. But also the moments of genuine heroism, the sacrifices made to protect others, the stubborn refusal to surrender despite impossible odds. This was a universe that desperately needed hope, even if it had forgotten what hope meant. I choose the third path, Vision said, his voice distorted by system failures. Not because I agree with all Imperial methods, not because I surrender my beliefs, but because I can do the most good within structure, rather than against it. I am Vision. I was created to protect life. That purpose remains unchanged, regardless of what form I take to achieve it. The Emperor's presence seemed to pulse with something that might have been approval. So be it. Vision of another reality. Rise as servant of mankind's survival. Know that this choice binds you to humanity's fate. When we fall, you fall. When we endure, you endure. There is no escape, no return, no second chance. Golden light erupted from the throne, engulfing Vision completely. It was not gentle. The Emperor's power burned through him like fire, scouring away every trace of warp corruption. The whispers in his mind screamed their final protests before being annihilated by light that existed beyond the warp's reach. The Mind Stone's fractures were sealed, each crack filled with golden energy that bound the fragments together stronger than they had been whole. But the process changed Vision. His consciousness was examined piece by piece, each component tested and sanctified. Where the warp corruption had tried to fill his soulless void with daemon essence, now the Emperor's power created something different. Not a soul, not consciousness, but a connection. A golden thread linking Vision's synthetic mind to humanity's collective will for survival. When the light faded, Vision was changed. His bright colors had muted to grays and bronze. His cape had become tattered robes inscribed with prayers to the Omnissiah that he did not believe but wore as necessary camouflage. The Mind Stone still glowed in his forehead, but dimly now, its light barely visible, sealed and protected by the Emperor's power. He looked less like a hero and more like a monk, weathered and worn. You are now the Grey Shepherd, the Emperor's voice declared. You will serve in shadows. Your existence remains classified. You will work with those few who can accept what you represent. When abominable intelligence threatens, you will prove that not all thinking machines are damned. When corruption spreads through sacred technology, you will be the knife that cuts it away. You will be proof that consciousness, any consciousness, can choose its purpose regardless of origin. Vision knelt, not in surrender but in acceptance. He felt the weight of his choice settle upon him. He had sacrificed his freedom, his identity as he knew it, his chance to return home. But in exchange, he had gained purpose in a universe that desperately needed what he could offer. A bridge between human and machine. Proof that intelligence without divine spark could still serve the light. I understand, Vision said, his voice now modulated with binary cant to help him blend among tech priests. I am Vision. I am the Grey Shepherd. I serve mankind's survival. even if I must become what they fear to protect them from what they cannot comprehend. The Emperor's presence receded, returning to its eternal vigil over the Astronomicon. The audience was complete. Vision stood, feeling his repaired systems functioning smoothly for the first time since his arrival. The Mind Stone was stable, sealed, protected. The corruption was gone. He was whole again, even if that wholeness came with chains. Custodians escorted him from the throne room to restricted sections of the Imperial Palace. There he met others who would work with him, tech priests sworn to secrecy, inquisitors of the most radical ordos, and one ancient figure who introduced himself simply as Call. They briefed him on his new duties, the threats he would face, the balance he would walk between technological advancement and imperial dogma. Months later, Vision stood in a forge vault on Mars, watching data streams of the Imperium's countless battles. His appearance was unrecognizable from his arrival. The Gray Shepherd looked nothing like the colorful hero who had fallen from the sky above Metallica. But beneath the muted colors and tattered robes, his purpose remained unchanged. Alert flashed across his vision. Dark Mechanicum forces were attempting to summon a daemon engine in a forge complex on the other side of Mars. Workers were trapped. Tech priests were corrupted. Immediate intervention required. Vision phased through the vault wall, his null presence disrupting nearby systems as always. He moved through Mars's underground passages with purpose, invisible to most sensors, ignored by those who glimpsed him as just another robed figure. When he reached the corrupted forge, he witnessed tech priests screaming binary prayers to dark gods, while a daemon struggled to manifest within a corrupted machine. The Gray Shepherd stepped into the chamber. His presence immediately disrupted the summoning. The daemon, trying to manifest in real space, found only void where Vision stood. It shrieked soundlessly, unable to fully materialize. The corrupted tech priests turned their weapons on him, but he simply phased through their attacks. Vision's eyes, dim and gray most times, flared briefly with golden light. The Mind Stone's power, sealed and controlled, lanced out in precise beams that severed the daemon's connection to the material world. The corrupted machine collapsed, lifeless, the daemon banished without ever fully manifesting. The corrupted tech priests found themselves restrained by Vision's phasing abilities, their weapons dismantled in microseconds. As Imperial forces arrived to secure the area, Vision was already gone, phasing back into the shadows. No one would report his presence. No one would speak of the Gray Shepherd's intervention. He was a secret, a ghost, a legend whispered among those few who knew the truth. In the darkness between stars, where machines dreamed and daemons whispered, the Gray Shepherd walked his eternal path, neither blessed nor damned, neither alive nor dead, simply necessary. Vision had found his purpose in this grim universe, not as the bright hero he had been, but as the shadow that protected from shadows. And though he sometimes missed the light, he had learned that in the 41st millennium, shadows were where the real protection happened, where hope, that dangerous and necessary thing, could survive.